Hi, everyone. I am back here again with my dear friend, Mr. Will Shelton, and we are just picking up our conversations from where we left off. The last time I ended by saying that I wanted to address something in the Bible that inadvertently deals with reincarnation, maybe. And I thought I would tell it to you. I think it's kind of funny. I thought I would explain it to you and get your feedback. Does that sound okay?
Sure.
Okay. So the point in the Bible that I'm referring to is when Jesus asked his disciples a few times, I believe. Well, it was repeated through different gospels, but asked, "Who do the people think that I am?" And the answer came back as, well, some say you're John the Baptist, some say that you're Elijah, others think that you're a prophet long ago that has come back to life. And of course, he's like, well, who do you think I am? And Peter said, well, you're the Messiah. What I find interesting and also just funny about that conversation is what was not said. When Jesus said, who do you think I am? And their response was John the Baptist, Elijah, or some other prophet that had come back to life. Jesus's answer was not, whoa, 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 y'all know we don't believe in that. He just went with what they were saying. And it has made me wonder how much of that was simply just a standard worldview at the time. Because it was very much so. I just don't know how much it was for them. But it is nevertheless a noteworthy conversation when we think about how Jesus did not respond. So I just wanted to start with that and see if you had any feedback or thoughts about that first.
Okay.
Okay.
So I played baseball. I played Little League Baseball years ago when I was a kid, and I was a really good third baseman. I could play third base. Okay. But I couldn't hit anything. Nobody ever worked with me with hitting, especially curveballs, which you just threw me.
Oh, no. It's not meant to be a curveball. No, this is just fun conversation, I promise.
It's okay. It's okay. I don't know. I think it. My only thought on that, I guess, is that if you go to the story of Peter walking on the water, when they were in the boat and the boat was in trouble and they saw Christ walking across the sea or the lake toward them, it states that at first they thought he was a ghost. Mm-hmm. And I find that interesting that ghosts were spoken of biblically, but a lot of people today, totally discount any belief in such. I don't know whether I believe, or I have seen some very strange things in my life which cannot be explained. But I don't know. So far as who they thought he was, I think he displayed qualities of all those people he mentioned. He had the power that Elijah called down in the Old Testament. He had the knowledge and the charisma of John the Baptist. He had all these qualities. So I can see how they were led, how other people, not necessarily his disciples, but they're quoting other people. Some say that you're whoever, some say that you're this person. So I can see where they draw those analogies, but I don't see a whole reincarnation thing going on there.
So I'm not necessarily saying, oh, this is an argument for reincarnation. I don't mean it like that. It's just a fascinating, noteworthy interaction. And what was not said, I thought was very interesting. And it did make me wonder how much of that was just standard worldview, that the idea of reincarnation, that we come back again and again, that is ancient thought that still is really largely around the world in many places today still. But I think it might also be helpful to sort of say kind of what that concept is. And then I think it's a good segue into a text message that you had sent me about NT Wright video. So let's just take Buddhist thought, for example, which I don't know if you've ever heard of the term samsara. And for anyone listening who is much more knowledgeable about this, my apologies on the front end, because I'm sure I'll botch it in some way. But samsara, very loosely, is kind of this wheel. It just, that kind of we enter into, and we just sort of go around this wheel. And that's probably a really bad explanation. But what I'm getting at is the concept behind this is that in each life, we are ultimately trying to get out of samsara, to leave the cycle. And so each life is supposed to be, hopefully you would think, a step in the direction towards making that happen. Getting out of that cycle is ridding yourself of all the baggage. You and I have discussed the baggage that not necessarily, well, we do enter into life with baggage, of course, but then as we grow, especially while we're young, we really accumulate a lot of baggage, for lack of a better word, through, environmental issues, through parenting and society and so forth. Mm-hmm. So the idea is to be able to leave that so that you don't have to keep repeating it. Now, I'm not saying that this is fact. I'm just saying that this is a perspective.
I get that.
Yeah, okay. I didn't actually think this all the way through, like, how am I going to make this segue? So bear with me. But you sent me a message recently. It was regarding a video that you also sent me. It was an interview with N.T. Wright. Yes. Or at least part of an interview with this man. He's a theologian. Well, he's a bishop, right? Yeah.
Who I've just learned of him. I've seen 2 or 3 of his videos, and he fascinates me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have heard the name, but I don't know anything about him until I started watching these videos.
Yeah.
You said in your message, if we believed in a second coming, a rebirth, which I love that you put that there. I don't know why we preach that Aunt Edith, upon her death, is dancing on the golden streets of heaven. I believe Aunt Edith is dead and will remain dead until our rebirth occurs in Christ's return. So 2 things, I guess, what I'd say here is, 1, does it change anything if we add in the idea that we are doing this again and again? In the sense of I don't know how to word this with you. I'm so sorry.
Let me just jump in for a second and say that.
Please rescue me.
It's okay. So I watched that video and I found what he said to be, and that was just a tiny part of what he discussed. That video was, I think, 1 hour and 4 minutes long, and that portion of it consumed about 5 minutes. So it's a very tiny portion that I quoted there. But a really good friend of mine just lost his dad in the last month, and I forwarded that video and that same message to a number of people, you being one, he being another. And then it hit me that sounds callous to say, your dad is dead and will remain dead. I mean, that just sounded, so I called him and I said, I'm just calling to apologize. I think the message that I sent you was a bit insensitive with the timing of it all. And he said, don't worry about it, because I don't believe what you're saying anyway. So it doesn't matter. He said, I believe he's up there right now, with God, having a great time. I said, okay, then we're good. But most every Christian funeral that I attend, at some point somebody says, well, mama's up there or daddy's up there, or they're up there, and I'm not totally convinced that's biblical. When you look at the rapture, when at Christ's second coming, the graves will open and those who know Christ will ascend. And, whoever is left here will have to go through a period of time of whatever. But anyway, I'm save me.
No, keep going that way.
It's just my personal opinion, the way I read it, that when you die, you're dead. And at Christ's second coming, when he comes to claim his church, at that point, we will come to life with our new bodies that are spoken of a couple of times in the New Testament. And we will come to know Christ in a very intimate way. It compares it to a bride and groom, he being the bride, he being the groom, the church being the bride. So that's the way I perceive it anyway.
Well, the second thing I wanted to bring up about this is how similar what you told me is to the religion that I was brought up in, which is I was raised a Jehovah's Witness. And they also do not believe that people go to heaven. Actually, they believe that a very specific number of people go to heaven. They're all Jehovah's Witnesses. But they believe in what I now understand, I don't know who came up with this term, but there's a term called soul sleep. Basically, it's like you're just asleep. You're dead. And from their perspective, after Armageddon, then God will resurrect everyone that was a Jehovah's Witness. I'm not sure, or if they were in the Bible and counted as worthy according to whatever witness standards there are, then they would come back. But it's not a far cry from this. And I think that that's interesting, because I don't necessarily disagree with you that if you're looking at what the Bible says, there's not really talk about anybody going up to heaven and dancing around right after they die. And I do see this connected to this concept of reincarnation, in that, from my perspective, I would say, if we're looking at reincarnation as a thing, that it would not be soul sleep. It's just your body is gone, but you as the individual, it's sort of like, this is a weird word, but it's kind of recycling. And you go in because you understand the things that you need to learn, and then you essentially choose what your next life is going to be, knowing full well that it could be absolute misery. And that's an intentional choice, because it's helping you work through things that you didn't get taken care of back here. Another thing to add to that is, if something like the concept of reincarnation is a real possibility, then the idea is, like, people talk about, well, exploring their past lives. I would say, no, don't do that. Because if you got it right back then you probably wouldn't be here now. And so all the stuff that you go digging up is not going to be pretty. It's not going to be flowers and butterflies everywhere. There's some ugly stuff back there, if that's what you're going to look into.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, let me say one clarification about what I stated a minute ago.
Okay.
To me, it really doesn't matter. It's a pointless argument, because as a Christ follower, I fully believe in my heart that at some point I'm going to be united with Christ. So if I die, and I probably will be cremated, but if I die and my body is burnt or whatever, and my soul is somewhere for eons, I don't care, because eventually I'm going to be united with Christ. Now, on the other hand, if I die and immediately I'm taken to heaven, then I'm united with Christ. So I can't lose,
Win-win. Yeah.
It's a win-win. So, I mean, we get into all these little arguments about how is this going to happen or how is that going to happen. And it really doesn't amount to a hill of beans, because the end line is it's going to happen. Yeah. So that's where I'm at.
I love that approach so much, because I can just as easily take this concept of reincarnation and say, if that's the case, it doesn't matter
Yeah.
This is where I am. This is what I have to work with. And I have this lifetime of baggage to clear away, enough as it is. So we want to do, I mean, most people want things to be better as they go along. In some form or fashion, we would like for our circumstances to improve. But I don't know that it actually matters if we have experienced past lives or not as to where we go from here.
As Max Strange, our former minister at Fellowship Church, has said hundreds of times, we know the end of the story. God wins. So
right.
That's what I hang on. God wins. I don't have to worry about all the particulars and individual battles. I know the end of the game is he wins. So through him,
yeah, I understand that reasoning. That makes perfect sense to me. What then? So you say about being reunited with Christ. What is that? What does that look like? Or do you have speculation about that? What does that mean to be reunited with Christ?
I think it's I wouldn't say reunited, I would say fully united. That as a Christ follower, I feel united with Christ now, but I'm living in an imperfect world and I am an imperfect person in an imperfect body. And that upon his return, I believe that the Bible speaks pretty clearly that at that point, the old passes away, that I am no longer I'm not surrounded by sin any longer. I am in a perfect situation of unity with Christ, the Son of God, which is, as I said in my book, that is love. That is pure love. So, I'm going in a circle here. I feel like it's
okay.
You know me,
no, really. I don't know why I'm struggling to get through this topic. It's not foreign to me, but it's just weird. Yeah. It's weird. It's weird to have a conversation about this in this manner, but it's good. So let's just stumble through it together.
Okay, so I sent you 2 NT Wright videos. All right, the first one was 35 minutes long, and to me, it summarizes the whole Bible in 35 minutes, and I thought it was wonderful. And the whole premise of his conversation in that video is that, okay, in the Garden of Eden, there was perfect unity between God and man until man screwed it up, and that unity was somewhat fractured. And then we saw that unity restored a bit in the ark when God rescued Noah and his family. There was unity with that family until man screwed it up. And then there was unity after the Exodus in the tabernacle in the Holy of Holies. There was unity there. And then that unity moved to the temple in Jerusalem, until they screwed it up and were, ostracized or exiled to Babylon. And then that unity came to us again through Christ. That God is continually trying to have unity with us. And the last culmination of that last effort in that is Christ. And so through Christ, we can have unity with God. He is our connection to God. So that's the whole point of being a Christ follower, is to have a connection to God, from my view. So right. I don't know if any of that pertains to what you just asked me or what you just said, but anyway, there it is.
I don't know if it does either, but I have thoughts on it. So my perspective is, I have shared your perspective before. I understand that. For me, it is one way of looking at sort of the big picture. I have a suspicion, I know that there is tremendous overlap in your worldview and whatever my view is of just possibilities. I recognize that I often wonder, well, I don't wonder, I know it often comes down to a question of language. I have a good example. There was a movie that came out recently called Land. It had Robin Wright Penn as the main character. She goes out onto the land, and she needs to go. She's being changed. She's dealing with grief, and she's going out here for a change. She's going through a transformation. In the process, she meets a man who is of indigenous heritage. I don't know what tribe he came from. But she meets this man, and they become friends. And at some point, he explains to her that he is sick. He has cancer. And some time goes by. She didn't hear from him, and she decided to go down into the town to see if she could find him. She ended up at the hospital, and this isn't a spoiler or anything. She ended up at the hospital, and she sees her friend lying on the hospital bed, but his eyes are shut. He's got people around him. And this other woman steps out to talk to her. She's clearly an indigenous woman as well. And Robin Wright's character says, "What's going on? What happened?" And this indigenous woman explains something along the lines of, well, he has this evil spirit and yada, yada, yada. And that's why he's here in the hospital. And Robin's response was, "I thought he had cancer." And the woman responded with, "Same thing." Mm-hmm. That is their language for what we would term as cancer or some ailment. It's just an issue of language, but we're talking about the same things. So when I hear you talk about this, especially this being reunited or united with Christ or whatever, I see it as this is us being brought back into balance, not just us as people, but the entire planet and universe for that matter. And am I implying that everybody gets that opportunity, or is it exclusive to just a particular group? No, there's consequence. We have life, our experience of existence is very consequential. I wish I wouldn't have even asked that question. I don't even want to address that. I don't know how to put that in words for you right now. I just have a feeling that at the end of the day, we are essentially talking about the same thing. We're just using very different language to do it. So yours is God and Jesus, for example. Mine would be more manifestation of God. I came up with a name, the unnameable. That's what I'm going to go with. Please help me remember when I forget.
Okay.
Yeah, so I see it more as manifestation or manifestations of the unnameable that we're interacting with, as opposed to like a single deity or being. It's so expansive and broad. But before I say anything else, does that resonate with you?
Yes, I think it all comes down to faith. We all have faith in something. Some people put their faith in money. Some people put their faith in family. Some people put their faith. A faith is a belief in something, and faith is a choice. You choose to believe this or that. So I choose to believe in a supreme deity who loves me and who represents love in all that he does and is. Whereas others may choose to put their faith in a more scientific approach. It's like the book I just told you about before we came on here. People put their faith in something or someone. So this is just what I choose to put my faith in.
Right. There's another element of what you sent me in that message. I feel like my experience, I'm not speaking for anybody else, but my experience as growing up, well, I'm not sure how to couch that one, but my experience with evangelical Christianity was actually it was like the whole idea was, let's get to heaven. This is everything. I also had that kind of experience with Reformed theology, where the focus is solely on the afterlife and getting to heaven and doing all the things that have to be done to get to heaven, where that's the focus. And as a result, this life cannot be enjoyed and experienced fully, wholly, because the focus is way here. Yeah,
I agree.
So go ahead.
I agree with that. My Christian view is that I don't have to do anything except to accept the love and grace afforded me through Christ's death. That by believing in Christ and the power of God displayed through him, that I can accept his grace, and I don't have to check off a lot of boxes in this life to enjoy unity with him in the afterlife. That being said, as a Christ follower, I think I am called to do certain things. I think I'm called to love my neighbor. So I think, that I need to be very intentional. That's another book I've told you about, intentional living. I think I need to be intentional about looking for ways to help people. I enjoy helping people. And that's not to say that a non-Christian couldn't enjoy helping people. I'm sure there are scads of them. But I find enjoyment helping people. A part of my enjoyment is knowing that I'm in agreement with the Christian doctrine. I'm in agreement with Christ himself by helping others. That's what he did while he was here. He helped others regardless of their socioeconomic status or their diseases or their race or their sex or whatever. He showed love to everybody. And I think that's what we're called to do. I certainly don't do that perfectly. I have biases. I have hang-ups. I have, the perfect example to me is the guy on Lower Broad in Nashville asking me for a 5 as I walk by. And I know in my head, which translates to my heart, I know in my head, at least I think I do, that he's going to take that 5 and go buy drugs. And what's the point in me giving him a $5 bill to go support his drug habit? Whereas really I really shouldn't be concerned with that. I should love him like a brother. And if why am I judging him? Perfect example. I went to Tullahoma, which for those of you who aren't from Tennessee, that's 20 minutes south of Manchester, where I'm close to Manchester. I drove to Tullahoma the other day to meet my middle brother to pick up a few items. And we met. I got the items. I'm headed back home. There's a Subway. I thought, it's lunchtime. I'm going to eat a Subway sandwich. I go in. The place is packed. Everybody else leaves with their food except me. I sit down to eat. I'm the only one who sat down to eat. And in walks this guy who was the most disheveled, obese, tat-covered, greasy hair. And my first thought was, boy, now that's a winner. And I felt this immediate conviction, who am I to judge whether this guy's a winner or not? I don't know him from John Brown's house cat. So anyway, he bought his lunch. And as I'm finishing mine, he's headed out the door. And by the time I get to the door, he's got the hood of his car up. And I said, do you need some help? He said, my battery's dead and I don't have cables. So I said, I got cables. I'll jump you off. So I came over and jumped him off. He was the greatest guy in the world. I could hang out with him anytime. So we all have these perceptions, which lead to hangups and hiccups, as I call them, that stop us from living out life to its fullest. To me, living out a life to its fullest would be helping everybody I know. I mean, I would love to win the lottery. Jenny and I have had this conversation numerous times. We would love to win the jumbo lottery thing and just write checks. Here's a check to Jude's Children's Hospital. Here's a check to the Red Cross. Here's a check to, that would be fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
We talked about the same thing.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
To me, that's living. But I find the reason for that belief through Christ.
One of the things that I really appreciate about Jesus's example is that of him going into places and just being in places where the outcasts were.
Yes.
The people who were relegated as not quality people, maybe you could say it that way. They were just outcasts because of poverty, because of adultery, because of disease, because of whatever. And
Yes.
he didn't give a damn. He went in and he was there. And those were the people that he spent his time talking to. I love that. I love that. And it is really mind-boggling how, not just within the Christian church, but just at large, the way that we kind of say out of one side of our mouth, oh yes, let's help everyone. But then we do, the thing that happened to you happens to me, with these little quick judgments that have been sort of conditioned into us because we look down on people who don't dress right, or people who don't have their hair in a certain way, or they don't make a certain amount of money, or their skin looks differently. We look down on it instead of embracing it and recognizing that they are also part of the whole. We call all of that stuff disorders. If you think differently, that's a disorder. If you walk differently, you could be disordered. Everything is disordered, as long as it does not fall within the acceptable social expectation that is largely determined by Western science that says this is normal, this is a healthy person, and everything outside of it is disordered and unhealthy. You say you like the way I think. I know my thinking is different than the way a lot of people think. And frankly, I probably fall into the category of neurodivergent. For a while, I thought I had Asperger's, but I don't think that's the case. I probably fall into the category of neurodivergent if we're going by this particular set of standards. But to me, and this is just me, not speaking for anybody else, in my experience, it's not a disorder. Yes, I've had some challenges, not just with the way that I think, but also I've told you before, I discovered last year that I have aphantasia, which is I don't have mental imagery. I am mentally blind. And so that makes something like math very difficult, or having to memorize lists for a test. Those are very difficult for me. At the same time, I don't see it for, again, me and my experience. It's not disorder or a disorder or disordered. It's a different kind of order. And when I look at the outcasts of society, let's just take America as an example, almost everybody that we consider to be an outcast, we label as disordered. And I'm saying, yeah, it may not fall into the mainstream of what you know and are most familiar with. It's just a different kind of order. That's chaos. Chaos is not complete willy-nilly, no order. Chaos is just a different kind of order. And that's how, and so in our very rigid Western science and thought is very rigid. We have very specific ideas about how things are. And just anything outside of that gets labeled disordered. And I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm saying there's another way to look at this, which is it's a different kind of order. And instead of ostracizing, we should be embracing. I personally, part of my own calling is working with people that we generally consider difficult. So that could be bipolar, borderline personality disorder. That could be schizophrenia. They are people who deal with these issues are not. It can be difficult because mostly because they are struggling so hard to explain what's going on up here and to understand their feelings that are so different from everyone else's. And so it's just, again, part of my calling to work directly with those people, because those are the people, the disordered, the ones who think differently, the ones who behave differently. In other times and places, those people would have been identified in their tribe or their community as a potential shaman, as some sort of person within their community that is integral for the functioning of that community. And those people are lifted up. They are not ostracized. That people seek them out, often because they are considered to have one foot in both worlds. So one foot in the spiritual world and one foot in the physical world, as opposed to most of the rest of us, which have just one foot in both feet in the physical. And yeah, that's what I'm getting at, is they are the ones that need the most attention and the most love from us and the most caring. And that doesn't mean I'm not suggesting enabling anything. I'm not suggesting enabling addiction or anything like that. I'm just saying the approach needs to change. We need to look at this very differently and not as a disorder, just a different way of being.
Okay, so my 3 points to that would be: one, I think we're all disordered in some way.
Amen, my brother.
I know I am a world of disorder. Let's see, 2, where was I going with all of that? 2, I like the way you think because you think. That's what I like about your thinking. You actually think. And a lot of people, well, I'm judging. It seems to me that a lot of people don't really think. They just go through life,
being told.
Or just living a day with no purpose and no forethought or whatever. All right, what was the third one? There was a third one. You pretty much said it at the end. I want to help. I am drawn to help people who want to help themselves. I have a difficult time really reaching out to help people who don't really have a desire to better themselves, to get out of their current state of disorder. If
Mm-hmm.
if I'm gonna spend my time and my resources and my prayers or whatever in an effort to help you, but you really don't want to be helped, then I'm just wasting my time. Is the way I see it sometimes.
Well, that is totally understandable. Let me present you with this information. I've studied trauma a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have found is the folks who don't want to be helped are usually, for wherever they are at that time, they're incapable
I get that.
Of wanting to change. And it comes down to the way that their brain is functioning or not functioning. And
Mm-hmm.
so I would say, from my perspective, and based on what you just said, it makes sense to start with the people who do want the help. But I would also encourage you to, the prayers that you're offering for those people, also offer them for the people who don't want help, in that they will maybe be transformed enough at least to just recognize the need for it and want it, at least just want it a little bit.
I think that's exactly right. And that's where I'm disordered. I mean, I let my hangups and hiccups get in the way of living out what I'm really called to do. I have biases. I'm not sexist. I'm not racist. I'm not any of that. But I have biases. I mean,
Sure.
everybody does. You see someone and you judge them, good or bad. And we're not here to judge. We're here to love each other and help each other. And so, yes, that you're exactly right. That's what I should do.
Well, it was just a recommendation or encouragement. I don't tell people what to do. um, yeah, I had another thought in there, but that's okay. It does remind me of something which I think you might appreciate. I'm a big fan of this. There is a prayer. You could call it a mantra, a prayer, it doesn't matter, whatever language feels comfortable to whomever is listening. It's Hawaiian. It is called Ho'oponopono. And it's a fascinating story, the way sort of that was made famous. And I'll just tell you this brief story as an example. There is a psychologist, or maybe a psychiatrist. His name was Dr. Len. I don't remember his first name. It's not easy to pronounce, at least in the first name that I saw. So I'll go with Dr. Len. Dr. Len was asked to head a psych ward at a prison, and in Hawaii. And at this particular prison, I mean, in this psych ward, they were the heavy hitters of crime, you might say, in terms of destruction, serial killers, rapists, so forth, prolific. And in this ward at the prison, everyone that worked in this section of it was constantly stressed and just living in constant terror all the time. They were terrified to walk down the hall if another prisoner was coming by. It was a very tense, violent situation.
Tiffany,
so they brought it, huh?
I'm sorry, you froze on my end. I didn't hear what you just said.
Oh, so they were everyone. Basically, everyone that worked at the prison was always under constant stress. It was just a very difficult, tense situation. And so Dr. Len comes to head up this department. He immediately goes into his office and closes the door. He never met with the patients, and the people that worked there were growing confused. So after about 3 months, they asked him, "What's going on?" Because they noticed that in that 3-month span of time, things were starting to change. Calm was starting to settle in. People were nowhere near as tense, or the workers were nowhere near as tense, and neither were the prisoners. So they said, "You're not meeting with any of these people, but there's changes happening. What's going on here?" So Ho'oponopono is a cleansing prayer. So it's sort of about, they call it washing memories in a way. So I'm not talking about brainwashing, it's just cleansing. So there are 4 lines to this prayer, and it covers everything. So this man would pull out an individual file. Let's say he looked at the file of a serial killer, and he would look all at their life story, and he would find something in their story that resonated with a memory of his own in some form or fashion. So he would call up his own memory, bring that memory into his awareness, and then he would say the following 4 lines. "I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you." So you have recognition, like you've got remorse, you've got forgiveness, you have love and gratitude, all in one package.
Mm-hmm.
And so the workers were still confused, but I guess they were like, "All right, it's working, so whatever." After 4 years, the psych ward closed down because they didn't need to have anyone in there anymore, and people had left. They didn't need to be there anymore. And it all came from the work that he was doing on his own memories that had some little slight connection to theirs. So not only is he healing himself in the process, He is healing these people without ever even having to speak to them. That is serious power.
Yes, that's
and
beautiful.
That's what, yes, it is. And that's why I also want to say, you can call it a mantra, a thing I say, it doesn't matter. Whatever language feels comfortable, this is just flipping beautiful. It covers everything. I have used this very prayer on my whole body. I have also used it with other people, but I use it, and the planet, but I use it on my body. I started with my body first. And then I started getting more specific with like specific organs and my blood and my bones, my hair, everything, my eyeballs. And the reason I was doing it is because I was noticing just an ever so slight response of some sort, ever so slight physical response when I would address my body and its parts in this way. And it has contributed to healing me of issues that I have acquired over the last several years, because I guess, as it turns out, long-term sustained intense stress isn't good for you. Who knew? So now I'm dealing. Yeah. Yeah. So I have to deal with repercussions of that. For me, it turned into fibromyalgia. But through other practices, but also through this prayer in particular, I have experienced profound healing. And I have also done this, as I said, I've said this prayer to other people without them ever knowing. And it is just quite a beautiful thing to watch it take hold and do its thing. Like, for example, my family, like my extended family, needs tremendous healing. I have people in my family who will never speak to me again because I don't practice the same religion as them anymore. These are immediate family members, by the way, but also extended. So I know now my next project that I'm going to work on is I'm just going to take photos of those people in my family who don't speak to me and want nothing to do with me. And I can use this prayer to heal my family without ever having to come in contact with them.
Yeah. Prayers are powerful. One of the two N.T. Wright videos that I sent you, I think it's the second one, he closes with a prayer that Jenny has written out somewhere. I wish I knew where it was. I would read it to you. But when I heard it, I thought, that is beautiful. But the whole time you've been talking, do you happen to recall, you're a Laverne High graduate. You graduated at Starwood Amphitheater.
I sure did.
Correct?
Yes.
In a beautiful ceremony. No one had a prettier setting for a graduation than Laverne High School back in the day. It was
great. I loved it.
But every year, at the end of every graduation ceremony for the 16 years that I was there, we closed with a prayer and song. Do you remember that?
I remember it being closed that way, I believe, but I don't remember what it was.
May the road rise to meet you.
Oh, yes, that.
And may the road rise to meet you. May the sun be on your face. May the wind blow gently at your back. May the rain fall softly on your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. That's the way we ended it. And I will see people sometimes, or I'll think of someone, and I sing that in my head. I mean, to me, that's the most amazingly beautiful prayer ever. But and it was beautiful just to see a whole group of 300 graduates sitting out there with their lives about to start, really, with this being sung over them and by them and to them. It was just beautiful. It was beautiful.
Yeah. Prayer is powerful. I do not deny the impact of that. Even, there have been many studies conducted on prayer and the power that it has over healing. The way that I see it or understand it is pretty scientific in that, everything has the earth has its own electromagnetic energy field. We have our own electromagnetic energy fields. Everything does. And within those fields, it's like a massive data dump. Like it's just gobs of information that are sort of in us and around us at all times. And I'm not talking about magic or whatever. I'm really talking about quantum physics, my limited education in that field. And so every time we come into even relative proximity to someone, there's a massive information exchange, even though we're not aware of it. And I think you learn so much about people in that space. If you're attentive to it, you can learn a lot about people when you're in that space without even ever having to ask a question. And that's powerful to me by itself. And so when I say a prayer like this, or when that song is sung as a prayer over these young people, it's like an information dump that goes out and then is received by those people as well. That's very, very powerful. It's subtle. It's ridiculously subtle. You would never even know that anything is happening. And yet something tremendously powerful is happening, to the point where in study after study, we know that people who are prayed for in one way or another often heal much faster or completely, as opposed to those who do not receive those prayers. And that's phenomenal to me, regardless of your faith or your worldview. That is freaking phenomenal. Good enough?
Yeah, it is phenomenal. Yes, to me, the whole geophysical magnetic realm, that's too random for me. I mean, yes, those properties exist in our universe, but I can't make sense of that. So
you mean as it pertains to us each individually?
As it pertains to the power of prayer and helping others.
Oh, I absolutely confess what I just said was really obscure, and I probably didn't use good enough language to articulate it very well.
You're good.
We should probably stop here.
We can, if you wish. We can.
Yeah, let's go ahead and stop here so it's not too long of a video. But this was wonderful, and I enjoyed it. Did you?
Yes, I did.
Good, good, good. Okay, well, hopefully we'll come back and do this again. And in the meantime, take care, and we'll see everyone soon.